Hello and welcome to this episode of The Inner Estate with your host, Bridget Stuart, and my special guest today, Maritza Davila. Maritza, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here because we're going to jump into, even the topic gets me excited. You are a consultant, a public speaker, developing leaders, developing businesses, and you focus in and around the momentum metrics. So momentum metrics, how you can use momentum to have real growth. Can you share more about what this means with everyone?
So I love talking about this. I call it momentum metrics. It's my spin on it. And it's really just how do we use data in our business week over week so that we can course correct if our business is not going the direction that we want it to go. So a lot of times I see business owners will have these big goals, especially in the beginning of the year,
Yes.
and they'll be ready to work, right? January 1st, they're so ready to go back and just conquer their goals. But then around, I don't know, we're in September. So around September, you just completely forgot about what it was that you were thinking in January. And so how do we keep our team aligned and on track to build momentum in our business so that we're able to accomplish the growth goals that we have for the year? That's why I love metrics. It's definitely one way to have clarity on where we're at in relation to our goals.
Well, I also am a huge fan of data and metrics. So, of course, this resonated with me immediately. You bring up a very common trap everyone can relate to that's listening to this right now. You start off the year hot and heavy, and yes, this is the year. We're going to make it happen. We've got a clean slate. We don't need to cover the gap from last year. We're starting fresh, right? And then next thing you know, it's Easter. Then it's spring break. And you're like, oh, before the last half of the second quarter, I'll get caught up. And then it's 4th of July. Then it's now, right? And then you have people saying, well, I guess we have to adjust the goals. So what you're saying is that you have tools and techniques people could use to avoid falling into that rhythm of the year that I just described, which I know 1,000 people just went, yep. So how can people avoid that?
The best way to avoid it is to make your goals tangible week over week. So instead of having an annual goal that you think about once a year, is have an annual goal that you break down into weekly goals. So you need to understand. And so one of the ways that I come up with this formula, I say it's like the progress formula. You think about your annual goal and then you divide that by how many weeks does your company work? Because not everyone works 52 weeks a year or
Correct.
50. So divide that by how many weeks you work during the year. And then you come up with a number of how many sales do I have to have for this week? How many leads do I need to get this week? Different things like that to see, okay, how do I reverse engineer my goal? And then when you're looking at that number week over week, and not just you, but your team has to have a number that they see correlates to the company goals. When your team is looking at this week over week with you, they're going to know, well, this week I was sick, so I didn't hit my weekly goal. Great, that's fine. But then I know, okay, next week I have to double down to do more work to make up for the gap that I had last
Right.
week. So it helps you to course correct week over week, because when you're thinking, even quarterly goals sometimes they're too far away for us to feel like tangibly I can do something today that is going to affect me in the whole year, the whole quarter. So I break it down all the way to weekly, and then obviously there's, monthly and quarterly. When we see week over week how we're doing, then we can adjust month over month and quarterly just to make sure that we are on target to hit our annual goal.
Do you recommend then, if something interferes with achieving the metrics in a given week, you challenge yourself that you cover the gap the very next week, so you don't allow a chasm to develop instead of a gap?
So life happens. So I know that sometimes we undershoot and we don't hit our goals, and that's normal. That life does occur. People get sick, people go on vacation. So I don't expect for every single week for you to maybe hit or over exceed your target. However, when you have gone 2 weeks not hitting your target, the following week, which would be the third week, it now becomes an issue that you need to address, because now we need to know what is occurring. This is now becoming a pattern. So if it happens every, off the cuff, not very frequently, and it's random, but as long as we're hitting our monthly goal. So let's say our monthly goal is 100 grand in sales. And so then every week we have to have 25 grand, right, in sales,
Right.
just as to give you an idea. So if one week we hit 20 grand in sales, then the following week I can say, okay, great, I just have to do 30 grand in sales this week, right? So if I hit that, then I'm still going to hit my monthly goal, so it doesn't affect the business. But now when I start doing 20, 20, 20, there's a huge problem. There's a problem here that's occurring. And now we need to address the root issue of what's causing this pattern. Because if not, then we might as well, if we never address it, there's no accountability and there's no point in tracking metrics if there's no accountability behind the metrics.
Okay. You tend to work with, in your consulting, you work with businesses of a certain size and leadership teams.
Yeah.
Correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So what do you do when there's a leadership team and it does occur that, say, one part of the team is not carrying their weight and it becomes that pattern? So it isn't random. It's not, oh, their dog was sick and now they're covering the gap, but it's becoming the chronic issue. How can a leadership team hold each other accountable in a way that is still going to protect culture and allow people to move forward in a positive way?
I love that you asked that question. So one of the reasons why I help create scorecards for my clients is it's a scorecard that everyone is going to see. So, everyone that goes into this leadership meeting knows that everyone is going to see their numbers. And when you show week over week that you are not hitting your numbers, peer pressure comes into the picture when you're in leadership, because I'm not talking to entry-level employees anymore, right? I'm talking to the leadership of the company. And so it always happens that someone says, man, are you serious again? There always happens. And if not, then there's a problem with the accountability of the team. And typically it even comes from the founder. Typically I see owners have problems having or have difficulty having those hard conversations with their staff and saying what's going on, right? And so this is where I always think that everything stems from the top. So if you as the owner are not hitting your numbers, you can't ask your team, like you can't even hold them accountable because you're saying, well, I'm not doing it either, right?
Right.
Culture always stems from the top. And so when you have an owner, a founder that is guns a-blazing, hitting these targets, they're setting the pace for the company. So their staff, you feel uncomfortable when you're a high performer put in with a low performer. The low performer will always feel uncomfortable around them. And so, but if you're the founder, you address it, right? But typically these are things that you would find out pretty quickly within like 90 days of onboarding someone and bringing them onto your company. So it shouldn't be like a reoccurring problem. But one, I see that having the transparency and the numbers within the leadership team, it builds off peer pressure. It makes people more accountable, makes them end up performing better.
Right.
If not, then the leader really needs to address it. And it depends on what owner I'm working with, whether they feel comfortable addressing it in front of the meeting or they prefer to be private, behind the door and talk to them, behind closed doors, which is fine. But the point is it needs to be addressed because you can't have metrics, you can't have this data and feedback and not do anything about it. And so the whole point of the metrics is to help hold your team accountable to help reach the company goals, right? So this is, if we help as every team member is helping to is helping the corporate vision. And so when we help the company reach its goals, if the company's large enough and, your goals are also tied to that, because once the company makes more money, if you have performance bonuses or things tied to how well you're doing to help them reach the company goals, then you're going to make more money as well. So there's a lot of factors into it, but this is typically what I see.
To me, it sounds like it would make things easier for a leader or the group to support each other because of what you're describing as that transparency.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that popped to mind as you were sharing that is in terms of leadership, I feel that in most instances, you want to praise publicly and you want to critique privately. So I do agree. You were saying the leader may decide to address, if it's a chronic situation, address that privately, and then allow that natural, competitive, friendly competition of peer pressure be the public, acknowledgement of like, hey, need some help there, and hopefully it sounds like this is cultivating a culture where the peers would support each other, like, dude, you missed your goal again? This Thursday, let's get together. Let's work all day together side by side. So it sounds like it is something that would be beneficial.
It
And
depends
as
on
you
the
mentioned,
culture.
those goals of the corporation, it does sound like you're creating a scenario with the goals and the metrics that it's a rising tide that will lift all the boats. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Because while depending on the workload that every leader has, they may or may not hear that, right? Oh, well, I could help you with that goal, or I could help you. What's going on? The whole point is we need to have transparency and honesty when we're having these meetings, because the point of leadership meetings is to kind of see where we're at and also solve problems. If we're seeing this as a pattern, then it becomes a problem, right?
Mhm.
Of no accountability, underperforming. So we need to talk about it. We need to be okay talking about it. And so you were mentioning, to praise in public and to critique in private. And while I agree with that, I've learned that it depends on the owner, because I've seen, depending on, how big a company is, but typically core values stem from the owner. So
Yes.
the owner should be really tied, should reflect, right, the values of the company. So if you have an owner that is very competitive and is very honest, maybe brutally honest sometimes they will correct them right in the meeting. But I often see the opposite. Honestly, I often see many times they would rather avoid the conversation than address it. And so I have to bring it up sometimes to the owner and say, well, we need to do something about this, because if not, like, this is a leader, right? And so we're talking to your right, left hands, of this organization. And if they're not on board, then what does that say about the rest of the team, right? If these are leaders, so people report to them.
Right.
And so a lot of times
So there has to be that candor.
there has to, yes, 100%. And if you don't have candor in your organization, then everyone's hiding things from you, right? As the owner, no one's telling you the truth. They don't want you to rebuke them, scold them, right? They don't want you to tell them the truth. And so we need to have that candor within these leadership meetings, because if we can't be honest to the leaders, we will much less be, we're not going to be honest then to even those that report under them.
That's
So,
right.
it's just something that we need to address.
One of the things that can create real disruption in my experience in a leadership team is if the owner, so we're talking about, the owner and then the leadership team, if the owner starts buying the excuses or the stories of why metrics and targets are missed, and they think they're being nice, quote unquote, and they start like buying into whatever the underperforming leader is selling as
Right.
to why the failure is there. That's another issue that I personally believe can be highly destructive to a company, not just in production, but culture and in production. What do you recommend if you ever see that happening?
Well, it's an excuse, and typically excuses are just more, how do I say this? They're just they're more beautiful lies, right? Like they're just dressed up a little better, you know?
Right.
And so again, it goes back to the values of the owner. And so your job as the owner of a company is to use limited resources to produce unlimited resources, right? Or to produce there's inputs and there's outputs. And so you have employees and they are a resource to your company. You have money, you have time, you have tools like software. So if you have these resources and you're not utilizing them to their highest potential, then you're not getting the output that you need for your company. And this not only affects the owner, it affects the leadership team, it affects the employees, it affects the clients, it affects everyone under the business. And so we need
Agreed.
to address with our leadership, why did you go into this role? There's a problem there's a reason I hired you. I hired you to solve this problem, right? You're head of marketing. I hired you to make sure that there's leads coming into my business, right? You're head of sales. I hired you to make sure that those leads are converting. You're head of operations. I hired you to make sure that this is a well-oiled machine and that clients are staying, right? Retention. So if they're not solving the problem that you hired them for, then you're underutilizing your resources. And you,
Right.
as the CEO, are like the chief accountability officer, right? You need to keep everyone accountable. And if we're not doing that, then we're not doing our job as owners. And I know this typically the higher level you get into business and companies, I always tend to see it's always a leadership thing. It's always a leadership problem, right? It always goes back to that. And how we manage people, how we manage motivation, and how do we get people to do what I need them to do? How do I
Right.
motivate them?
And even what they state they want to do usually.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so sometimes it's bringing that back and saying, I like to tell them, well, what are the goals? What are their goals, right? What are their goals personally? What are their goals financially? What are their goals as far as their character? Because sometimes people don't want more money. Sometimes people want to see what they're made out of. Sometimes people want to be stronger. They want to be better at communicating. They want to be better leaders in general, right? Whatever it is. And so I always like to tell them, well, let's ask, sometimes they don't know, right? A lot of times the owners maybe don't have these conversations. And I say, well, what's the goal of that person? And is there a way to tie it back so that they're benefiting from the company goals, right?
Right.
If let's say right now we're going through a season of rapid growth and they're having a lot of workload. Well, if that person told me they wanted to be more resilient, they wanted to be stronger, I'm going to tie it back to that. And I'm going to say,
Yes.
well, this is just a season, right, of business. It's not forever. It's not going to be like this forever. And so we when we push ourselves a little harder in certain seasons of our business, when we come out on top, we realize I can actually do more than I thought I could. And
Right.
you start becoming a stronger, more resilient, tougher person and your character. Isn't that what you wanted? And so just tying it always back to them.
Well, I think that all of that I'd be in agreement with. And the candor is so critical. I feel like some of the strongest leaders that I've had the pleasure of working with, they have this ability to connect the goal to the individual's goals, and they use candor. But with the candor, the person knows they also care.
Right.
So there's that balance of caring about them as an individual within the organization and having the candor so that they can succeed under your ownership and guidance rather than flounder and fail with a pretty story to tell about why it happened under your leadership and guidance. So it sounds like we have some similarities in that philosophy.
I agree with you. And it reminds me of something my husband told me a long time ago when I was much younger. He told me, before when I was an employee years ago, I used to have a trouble or difficulty speaking up for myself, like defending myself to people that were in higher authority than me. And I brought this up to my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time. And he told me, that surprises me. And I said, what do you mean? He says, you never have a problem bringing things up to me, do something wrong or there's a problem. And I said, that's interesting. As soon as he told me that, I realized that I only had difficulty bringing problems up to people that I didn't think really cared or I wasn't close to in
That's
some
right.
ways. So I didn't think that, they don't really care about me, right?
Right.
So to tie it back to what you said, after you told me that, I completely changed. And so whenever there was a problem, I would just bring it up. I didn't care if
Hmm.
they cared or not. But there's this relationship in leadership of like soft skills and showing people that they matter to you as a person,
Right.
but also tying it into hard skills but I also need to make sure they're performing, right? So it's always that weaving of, I care about them and I want to show them that I care, but at the same time, I also care about my company and I need to make sure
Yes.
that we're getting the results we need, not just for me, but for everyone. And
That's right. Right. So that's interesting. So you actually experienced it in your own life firsthand,
in
right?
my own life, yes.
So speaking of which, so your company is Optimized 360. And can you share with everyone how our conversation shows up for you in your current career? So how do you hold yourself accountable as a leader in your own company? Does this
Yeah,
the
so I
momentum metrics for you?
Yeah, so I like to say that you can't lead anyone else well if you can't lead yourself well. So I always bring that back into my life. So the scorecard that I create for clients, I use in my own business, right? And so I always track, what's working, what's not working in the business as far as whatever my constraint is. And so whether I'm looking at leads, sales, or retention, I'm always tracking that in my own company because I want the feedback. That's the whole point, right? I
Right.
want the feedback so I can make decisions on maybe I shouldn't do this. This isn't working as well as I thought it would. Or this one's working really well. I need to double down on this one, right? And
Hmm.
so I do implement the same things. And really, I hold myself accountable because I work together with my husband in my business. And so when I'm not holding myself accountable, you better believe that my husband is. And so
Yes.
we're always looking at the same numbers and, we work together. And so he knows when I am really pushing the gas pedal. And he knows when I am slowing down, becoming a little more steady. And so we have a way of just keeping ourselves accountable and making sure that we are who we say we are, not just by what we say, but by what we do.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So you've got a built-in accountability that's a little bit next level than some people who get to go to work and then leave it at work when they go home.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I enjoy working with him because
Hmm.
what we were talking about with candor. I mean, one, I know he cares about me, but second, he's very honest. So my husband's not the type of husband. I've seen some which they're like so kind and nice, and they always say their wives are doing a great job no matter what they're doing. No, my husband will tell me, like, you did great. And when he tells me I did great, I know I did a great job. But he will also tell me, I'm like, how did I do? And he'll tell me, I think you could have improved on this, that. And so, but that's the type of feedback we need because
Yes, to
if we
grow.
just, yeah, if we
That's
just
where the
get
growth is.
encouragement, if we
Right.
just get encouragement all the time, it doesn't benefit us to grow, like you were saying. And so
Right.
he's the best accountability partner that I could really ask for in life, business. It really helps.
So when did you become a public speaker and how did that come about?
Well, I can tell you, I I've never been afraid of public speaking.
Hmm.
So, for example, in high school or college, when you'd get group projects and they would always, they always wanted someone to present, I would always raise my hand. I never had a problem being the person to present.
Hmm.
And so I've never been afraid of public speaking, honestly, my entire life. But I started getting into speaking over the last couple years where I would I first started with a podcast and would talk to different business owners and did that for a bit. And then I started getting asked, some of the clients that I had started asking me to speak at their events and, to kind of give some of the knowledge back to entrepreneurs and business owners. And so I happy to speak. And so it's something that I am building up even more in 2025, 2026, and the years to come, because I've seen how when I speak, the main thing I want is for the audience to be able to apply the knowledge that that I'm giving them. And so I've
Right.
heard from, speaking engagements that I've had, some of the attendees tell me, wow, that was, really insightful and actionable, something that I can actually implement into my business. And this caused it, or into my life, right? And so that's really rewarding to me and very self-fulfilling. So it's something that I'm even building on more in the years to come.
I think that sounds amazing. When you talk about years to come, where do you see yourself as a professional businesswoman and a speaker? Like, what goals are you striving towards?
Yeah, so I really want to help. Right now, the goals are ever changing. I feel like every time you hit a goal, you always just make it a little bigger. We're just never satisfied, I think, as entrepreneurs. But
Right.
right now, I would really like to help genuinely 100 close business owners where we would have a really not like a superficial relationship, but 100 people that I really know well, and to help them grow their business substantially. Really what I'm trying to do is help them grow their leadership substantially through their business, because I've seen how when you are able to affect a leader of leaders, which is what I see business owners as,
Yes.
then you're able to affect more people. And so if I just get 100 people that I work closely with and really help them to build accountability, really help them to have hard conversations with leaders, right? Really help them to weave in that efficiency, which is kind of like the left brain and the data and the feedback, but also weave in like, how do we make quality decisions? And what is our vision? And what are our core values? And how do I show my people that I care about them? And all these things that are, intricate parts of leadership. If I am able to benefit them so they can benefit their leaders, then I know I'm not only affecting their company, but I end up affecting, their families.
Yes.
Because when leaders, when you are in, I've had the privilege of being around really great leaders in my life, whether it's in family, whether it's in my church, different areas, whether it's in business. I've had the privilege of being able to be close to them. And when you're close to a really great leader, it just affects you and your character and the way you think and the way you act, the way you speak and your behavior. And so whether or not there's ripple effects, within our community. And so I believe that I could be that for at least 100 people and make a true impact that way.
It creates a ripple effect that we'll never know the full extent it reaches.
100%.
So I think that's really beautiful. And so when you wake up in the morning and you're being that leader of yourself, you have that passionate vision of impacting thousands of lives by focusing on 100.
Right.
That's really inspiring.
I mean, and
And then
even
as you said,
within that 100, I've even thought of like 10, like
nice.
your main 10 people.
And
But
you
yeah.
work with leaders all across the country.
Yeah. So I live in Naples, Florida. And
Hmm.
so
I love
have
Naples.
great. Oh, I didn't know that.
I do. Yeah. It's beautiful, beautiful
It
town.
it is beautiful here. But I love doing this in general. And so I've done it virtually, so nationwide, and we just coordinate with the scheduling. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
I mean, as long as you got Zoom, and happy to, do it through Teams or Zoom or Google Meets or whatever it is, then I can speak with you. And I love meeting new entrepreneurs.
But let's take a moment. Could you describe sort of, I know this is an overused phrase, but the avatar of a company or an owner or a leader?
Yeah.
Share with everyone, what's your current business client look like?
Yeah, my current business client is a business owner that is also an operator in their business. And so they're involved in the day to day. They are very driven, coachable, always wanting to learn more and want to grow their business. They definitely have a team, but sometimes they don't know how to utilize their team. They don't have any accountability. They don't even know how to implement a system to keep their employees accountable. And typically I see that they're anywhere within about 800,000 in revenue or up to 5 million in revenue right now.
Mm-hmm.
So those are typically they're service-based industries that I've been working with. I'm service agnostic, I'd like to say, 'cause but
Right.
yeah, and they're just driven. They're leaders, they're high performers, they're really good doers, right? But it's now transitioning from being this great doer to now I need to become a great leader.
Great leader. Yeah. And that's really a meaningful growth opportunity. So
100%. Yeah, they're
it's
great
funny
at their
you call it
craft.
service agnostic, or because my chosen industry is very, very deeply entrenched in real estate. And I say that
Mhm,
I'm broker agnostic because I have coaching clients with at least 8 different brokerages and guests from companies I don't even have a client with, because the growth is never limited to one industry or one company. The like-mindedness among people that are growth-oriented, education-based, they desire and hunger to get just 1 degree better than who they were
mhm,
yesterday.
mhm.
I don't care what company you're with or what industry, I wanna connect with you.
100%, and they're
Yeah.
inspiring. I mean, my
Yes.
clients inspire me. That's what I love
Yes.
about them because they don't mind
Yes.
doing the hard work. They don't mind the discipline, the commitment, the dedication that comes with being an entrepreneur. It doesn't
Mhm.
bother them. So I love being around them, but then there's also other things, they're masters at their craft. They're really good at what they do.
Yes.
I'm not trying to like teach them how to do what they know what they
They already know
do.
how to do that, that's right. And
Yes.
you take them and allow them to develop nuanced skills in becoming that leader that is going to inspire others and create success through others. So
Yes.
it's amazing. So I always like to think about, hopefully someone out there is listening and maybe they have an entrepreneurial fire within themselves that they have not allowed to come out. Maybe they are in a career that is satisfying and paying the bills. It's satisfying for day-to-day existence, and yet they have a dream and desire that is undeveloped. I always like for my guests, could you share something for anyone listening feeling as if they are stuck or that things are not possible? Maybe one step they could take today towards realizing a dream or creating change for themselves.
I love that. I know what that feels like when you feel stuck, when you are thinking about, I have this big dream inside of me, but I'm also doing really well in my day to day, but life feels a little blah, right? Life feels a little, it's like you're going through the rhythm, but there's no real excitement. I can tell you being an entrepreneur has had the highest highs for me and the lowest lows for
Yes.
me. It's a roller coaster. I was much more steady when I was just
Yes.
an employee. But if you're willing to go through that, I really think that life is worth living if you live it boldly. And you really, I've read this book, it's called Never Play It Safe.
Hmm.
Just the title alone, I could die tomorrow, right? And so I want to do what I want to do. And so I've been told from tests that I'm a goal oriented risk taker. But I
Hmm.
really used to think that I was risk averse for many reasons. And if you're someone that's risk averse, then I would tell you to analyze the risks. So see the pros and cons of doing exactly what you're doing for the next 5 or 10 years and make a decision, because you really have to make a decision on, is this what's best for me? And maybe right now it is, but
Right.
you could build on it. If you feel this, not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur, but if you are, then if you feel this calling or you feel this, dream that you just can't get out of your head, then you should start working to do something about it. And it doesn't mean you have to quit your job today and then go and become an entrepreneur tomorrow, but you could start learning about something that you're interested in doing as far as becoming an entrepreneur. You can get information and knowledge, so you're lowering the risk every time that you learn more about the business opportunity that you're looking to pursue. So my advice to that person is, if you know you're going to be an entrepreneur, you just don't know when, you might as well start picking something, because most likely the first thing you pick isn't even the thing that works out, if we're honest.
Right.
And so you might as well pick something and learn about it and try to do it, steadily. Like, just, you don't have to be like doing these big, huge things right away, but just even learning how to be consistent with little things will help you and teach you the character that you're going to need to be successful in business.
I think that's excellent advice. And when you do, you do. I love how you said that it starts reducing the risk. The more that you learn and investigate and interrogate and connect with others. What do you recommend if someone does have a dream and they share it with people that love them and they are met with an immediate limiting belief from people that do love them, but, they shoot it down? Because we know, you and I both talk to enough people, we know that happens every day. What do you
Yes.
advise?
My advice would be to not share your dream with people, really. You've got to be really careful who you share your dreams with. Some people, Joseph in the Bible was almost killed for sharing his dream. So you got to be careful who you share your dreams with, even if it is family, because that was his brothers. So I think that, one, be careful who you share your dreams with. And if you share your dreams with someone and they give you a limiting belief, you need to realize that they're talking about themselves and not you. So a lot of times, they're seeing their view of the world, their worldview, their perspective, and they're sharing that with you. They don't think that they could accomplish what your dream is, but that doesn't mean that you can't accomplish what your dream is, right?
Right.
We often hear things from people and we think, oh, they don't believe in me, or, and we personalize what they say. But many times people are just talking about themselves, really, most times.
Yes.
And so really just discard it. And you should be more concerned about what you think about yourself and make the opinions of other people obsolete in your mind. Because if you let other people's opinions of you govern the way that you behave, then you're not yourself. You're not your truest self. You're becoming a version of someone else.
That's an interesting perspective on that. And that shows up in other ways as well, now that you mention it. Particularly when people they did take the risk, they're in it, they're getting a certain level of success because they're being their true, authentic selves and showing up in that manner in their company and their business. Then all of a sudden they say, look at that person who's doing it that way and is more successful. Let me be like them. And then they lose their way, because so it can hit you in either. Yeah, it can hit.
Right.
That's interesting. You brought that up. It made me really, that's something for me to think about more later.
Yeah.
Be
no one
as often as
is you.
possible, be yourself.
Yeah. No one is you, right? No
Right.
one can be you. And so that's, I heard someone say, no one is you, so that's your superpower, right? Just being yourself. And, I think entrepreneurs in general are bold risk takers that constantly doubt themselves. So it's like you push your past all these things and you just learn courage, right? Which is I feel the fear and I do it anyways.
Right.
And then after you do it, you're like happy that you did it.
That's right. Yeah. And you nearly always discover, as long as you allow your mind to be open to it, you discover something else, not just about everyone around you, but about yourself as well. So
Right.
it's always worth it.
Yeah. I think you're developing self-control, right? Back to what we were talking about earlier with, I can't lead anyone else if I can't lead myself. And so when you decide for yourself what you're going to do, what your future looks like, what your company is going to look like, what goals you're going to go after. That's you're developing self-control. And that's, I mean, one of the best attributes that really you can develop in your character. And so I really think we're having a discussion about character,
Yeah,
honestly, even though it's being an entrepreneur. But I mean, I think becoming an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur is one of the best ways to develop your character.
I agree. Particularly when you lean in on competing against yourself first and
Mm-hmm,
foremost, leading
mm-hmm,
yourself first and foremost, and attempting to lean in on your natural strengths and the knowledge and strengths and skills you've enhanced.
mm-hmm.
You're impacting so many people that, as you and I said before, there's going to be people that you influence and impact that you don't even know, and you never will.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you never will. I mean, we'll see at the end of our lives or something how we did.
Right.
But
That
I
would be
mean,
beautiful.
yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, I'm surprised by how different people are from me and how much more skilled they are in different things than I am. I'm not surprised with my own strengths because I know myself. But
Hmm.
other people, there's this girl that worked with me, and she was so great at doing like math and like analyzing things, and she would be happy to do that every single day.
Right.
I cannot. Like, I cannot do routine, repetitive work day in and day. Like,
Right.
I would go crazy. But she was great at it, and she did a phenomenal job. And I was impressed with her because I was like, I could never do this. I could never do this. And so you just realize I just need people on my team that have differing strengths than mine, and
Yes.
that where I'm weak, they're great. And it comes naturally to them, right? And they have no problem. I could not do routine study the same thing over and over again every single day. Like, I would just be so unhappy. But she could, and she enjoyed it. And so finding those different people and seeing where people's strengths lie, I think is a really fun thing to do as a leader, honestly.
Well, when you have, speaking for yourself now, what do you do if you ever let yourself down? If you let yourself down, how do you rebound and recuperate? And how do you move forward from that?
Yeah. So before, when I used to let myself down, I would just beat myself up about it and constantly replay, the moment, or, I'm just beating myself up about it and being a bully to my own self. That's what I used to do. But I like to think that the main problem I'm solving in business owners or for my client is inefficiency. And when I started to lean into that term, inefficiency is all about wasting time, wasting resources, wasting money, wasting effort, right? And every so often, I'm still human, and so I'll get these emotions that come up. And about a month or two ago, it came up where I was just about to just beat myself up and, just ruin the rest of the day.
Right,
And then
right.
I remembered, yeah, because you're not productive, right? When you're like
Hmm.
beating yourself up. So, and then I thought about this and I said, what a waste of time. I
Yeah.
could be doing something about this thing that went horrible or that I'm not doing a good job at. I could do something about this right now to affect my future. But if I wallow in this, all I'm doing is wasting time. I can't actually have a ability to affect this right now. And so as soon as I was about to start going on this,
Hmm.
emotional roller coaster, I realized, I was like, when I complain and when I beat myself up, I'm wasting time. Stop wasting time and do something about it. And so that was like me coaching myself, really.
Right.
And I said no more. And so it's become, that is now the new pattern, because I'm like, why am I going to waste any more? I've already done this before and wasted enough time. I don't need to waste any more time, right? Like, the
That's
time
right.
clock's still going, so let's go.
Yes, that is right. Yeah, the clock is not going to stop.
Exactly.
So I think that that is a powerful tool that people could use for themselves. And it is, so you address it and it sounds as if you choose action. So you stop the thought and you say, okay, I've had those thoughts. I don't need to have them again. And now I could take action. And I think that that is a really meaningful tool that anyone could use if they find
Yeah.
themselves in that spiral or the tilt-a-whirl of negative thoughts and emotions, because it is our most precious and valuable item to budget. It is not money, it is our time.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that concurrent with that is the mindset and emotional bandwidth.
Yes.
And so that's a phenomenal tool. You've developed the awareness level to stop yourself. So you stop yourself, assess, get into action. It sounds like you primarily go into action addressing the area that's causing the concern, which I think
Yeah.
that's a double benefit, because then you're coming out like further ahead. What if you get a little bit of resistance? What if your subconscious is like, all right, I hear you, but I don't want to take the action in that area? Would you choose action in another productive area, or what would you do in that instance?
I weigh the pros and the cons. So I'm like pretty analytical. So I think to myself what I said before, and I say, okay, well, if I don't do this, what? A lot of times when I don't want to do something, it's some kind of fear or something, it's like fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of whatever. And every time I think of that, I'm like, well, what do I, what do I risk, or what am I risking here truly? Other than maybe being embarrassed, maybe getting a no. This is not physical harm.
Right, right.
I'm not I'm not really risking anything.
No.
It's just this emotional,
Mm-hmm.
what are they going to think? What if it doesn't happen? What am I going to think about myself is really what
Mm-hmm.
it is. And so it's like, well, the worst that could happen is I'm back at square one, right? Like exactly where I'm at right now. So I'm really have nothing to lose. And so I'm going to go for it. And so I always go back to like the pros and cons, like if I do this, if I don't do this, like, and long term, short term, what does this look like? But you're right. I am now aware of the thought, because I don't think that we can be a victim of our own mind. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times I know what that's like. And so I know what it's like to be a victim of my own mind and just wallow in the thoughts of, oh my God, whatever it is. And I
Right.
don't want to be a victim of my life. I don't want to be a victim of my mind. And so I now much more choose to be a victor over my mind and have self-control and tell myself what thoughts I allow into my head and what thoughts I reject. And so there are some thoughts that, like anyone, they come into my head and I have to, on purpose, say, I reject that thought. And now I'm going to go do
Yes,
this to, counteract that, basically.
that's
And
right.
so I think that's what it is. It's really a lot of self-control, and it's something we're going to deal with for the rest of our life, right? What thoughts we allow into our head. And I
Into
think
our mind.
into our mind. Yeah. And so we need to be paying attention to what we see, what we hear, what we say. We need to pay attention to all that. These are all
Yes,
doors. These are all gates. And so
yes,
you have to pay attention to what is it that I'm saying? What is it that I'm looking at? What is it that I'm hearing? And if what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is not good, then just like close it out. And if it's coming from my
yes.
own head, I should do the same, right?
Close
I
it
should
out.
close
Yes.
it out.
One of my clients reintroduced me to a fantastic word. So this was actually a couple of years ago. Amber Cruz, while we were talking about, it was in her own mind issue, she said, I woke up today and I said, I rebuke all of those thoughts. And I was like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I love rebuke. For some
mm-hmm.
reason, it's so powerful and it
Yes,
has such a huge impact. So
I love
now
it.
with my own self-talk, if it starts going into I call it the tilt-a-whirl machine, I say, no, no, bam, Bridget
Uh-huh.
Stuart, you rebuke
Uh-huh.
getting on the tilt-a-whirl and you rebuke those thoughts. I usually say 3 affirmations and then choose an action item. So, but I think you might want to consider rebuke.
I
There's
use
something
that
about it.
word. I love that
Yeah,
word.
I love
I
it.
rebuke. I love that word. No, I
Yes.
do use it. I do use it.
Good, good.
It's a, I mean, to me, it has even like a spiritual component
It
to it,
does.
rebuke.
Yes.
And so, that's why I like it. And so even sometimes
Me
when
too.
it might not be in my own thought, but if I see something, if even in my own head, I will say, like, I rebuke that, and
Yes.
so 'cause I don't want to accept just whatever is presented to me. I
Right.
want to decide what I allow within my mind or myself. So I love that word.
I do too. So it's such a fantastic word. Well, it's been so delightful to explore what you're doing with your clients and also with yourself and your own company. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
have all of your contact information available in the description with Optimize 360 and with how people can reach out to you, especially if they're interested in growing as a leader themselves and if they were listening to this and saying, I can relate to that description of a prime candidate of a client for you, then I would love
Hmm.
for them to reach out. I
Yeah.
also would like to invite you to come back. I was thinking of some other things I would love to explore with you, particularly in leaders that do find themselves confronting either failure or shifts they cannot control, things outside of their control, technology changing or market changing. And I would love to explore how you work and guide people through that, remaining true to themselves and growing as that leader and making tough decisions. So I'm hoping that you would agree
Yeah.
to come back as a guest again.
I would love to.
That would be fantastic. I want to thank you again for being our guest. And if you are listening to the show, I hope you'll return again and listen to the next episode of The Inner Estate. Maritza, this has been delightful. I feel like I could talk to you for hours,
Me
and
too.
I just look forward to having you come back. So thank you so much.